Good evening, everyone. As always, I am Bradley Davis, along with my co-host, Marcus Thomas, and we have a great show for you today on episode 6 of Tailgaters.
That's right, Bradley. The presumptive first overall pick, Joe Burrow, has had his name in headlines the past couple weeks, with people thinking he might pull an Eli Manning and refuse to play for the Bengals and demand a trade. Bradley, what do you think of these?
I don't think he's going to do that. He has come out and rebuked these claims, saying that they're false, that he will play for whoever drafts him. I honestly think compared to other teams that have had the first round pick, the Bengals have a pretty good setup for him. I mean, they have Tyler Boyd, who's an up-and-coming receiver. A.J. Green has been hurt. People aren't sure if he wants to stay there, but I feel like having Joe Burrow is it's a reason that might get him to stay. And you were talking about before the show some things going around about his pre-workout, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I saw something where his pre-draft interview with the Bengals went exceptionally well, and from what the Bengals have been saying about it, it is presumptive that they will select him with the first overall pick.
Yeah, and so if he didn't throw the workout, I feel like it's a pretty good sign that he is not going to try to avoid playing for the Bengals. And I don't think the Bengals are going to do a trade. I've heard a bunch of arguments, Bengals need a lot of help. They could leverage Joe Burrow, get a lot in return, but it all starts with the quarterback. We all saw how much Patrick Mahomes was. Not that the Chiefs were bad before him, but he really pushed them over that hump. How much a quarterback can just change a franchise. And in the NFL, it's so in the NBA, one player, LeBron goes to a team, a bunch of players go to him. In the NFL, it doesn't happen quite like that, except with the quarterback position. If Joe Burrow just lights it up in his first couple years in the league, people are going to want to come to it. People are like receivers, offensive players, defensive players are going to want to go play for the Bengals. What kind of defensive player does not want to play for a guy who's going to put up 40 points a game?
Exactly. I think another key, if the Bengals do draft Joe Burrow, which I totally think they should, I think Joe Burrow is going to be a very good franchise-altering quarterback, but at the same time, they need offensive line help if they do draft him. Because you can have the best quarterback ever, but if he's constantly getting hit, he can't do anything. Andrew Luck was one of the best quarterbacks we've seen for a while, retired early. He got sacked and hit more often than any quarterback during his
that's
career.
really sad.
And he was always banged up. He got injured quite a bit because his offensive line did not help protect him. And if Joe Burrow is constantly getting hit, I don't think he will develop to be the quarterback he could be if he had a good offensive line.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. And so it's just a decision the Bengals are going to have to make. If they draft Joe Burrow, they have to make a commitment to shore up that offensive line, either in free agency or in the draft. And offensive linemen, even though they go higher than they used to, you can still get really good quality linemen in the middle rounds of the draft. So if they just, put some stock in that, then, that hopefully Joe Burrow will be protected. But, teams don't always get it right. They could draft the wrong guy. They could just decide not to draft any offensive lineman, and then Joe Burrow will probably wish that he leveraged his way out of Cincinnati. But I think it's actually going to be a good fit. And I guess Andy Dalton is a free agent. I was going to say he'd be a good role model, but he's probably not going to be there. But I definitely see Burrow going with Cincinnati number one and not having any complaints about it.
Yeah, I agree. Joe Burrow, wow, born in Ames, Iowa. Quick shout out to that. Born in the same hospital as a Heisman winner. He grew up most of his childhood was in Ohio. For him to be in Cincinnati, Ohio would be a great story in that aspect as well.
Oh, that's a good point. It's a really good point. Well, that'll wrap up this segment, but make sure to stick around because we will be joined by Day One Battlehawks fan, Reese Wegman.
Thank you for joining us today, Reese.
Thanks for having me.
You have been a very vocal supporter of
Extremely.
the Battlehawks.
Big Hawks guy.
Big Hawks guy.
Big showing on Sunday. They came out with a win.
Huge showing in St. Louis. Debut game. Football back in the Dome. St. Louis showed out. The Battlehawks showed out. Nothing more you could have asked for.
Dude, Reese is ready, baby. He's ready for this XFL season.
I'm ready. Didn't make it to the first game there. Tickets were very expensive. Tickets were selling for like $20 or $30 standard sales, and they were up well over $100 for the game. St. Louis was jacked up for some XFL action.
Do you think What are your expectations of the Battlehawks for this season?
Things are looking really good. The Battlehawks are 2-1 right now, leading the East. So, with only 4 teams in each division, the Battlehawks are obviously right in the mix to, make it to the finals. I definitely think they're going to go for a good run. And, anything can happen. It's really hard to predict still really early in the season. It's the beginning of the league. No one knows what could happen.
Right.
But, yeah, I think things look about as promising as they could be unless we were Houston, because Houston's easily the best team in the league right now.
Yeah, well, I think you can speak to this too, but I think St. Louis Battlehawks are the most XFL impactful team no matter how good they are, because the St. Louis fan base has rallied so much around them.
Definitely.
They've missed professional football
For sure.
there in St. Louis, and I think them being there maybe until the NFL decides to put another team back there, I think them single-handedly could keep the XFL alive for a while. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, people in St. Louis are legitimately excited for the XFL. I think in a lot of other cities that have an XFL team and an NFL team aren't as excited about the XFL. They support it, whatever, kind of just something to pass the time. But St. Louis is legitimately hyped up about the Battlehawks. And like I said, that game sold out, and people were trying to get resale tickets like crazy. There was tailgating like crazy. There was just a party down there at the Dome. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses, through the rest of the season if St. Louis keeps with it. But, I mean, the last week it looked like St. Louis was a football town.
Mm-hmm.
As we all know, the XFL is almost kind of like a tryout to make the NFL. It feels like the way the St. Louis fan base has rallied around the team is almost their tryout to get an NFL team back there.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I know a lot of people who would love an NFL team back in St. Louis, and I love a lot of people who wouldn't love an NFL team back in St. Louis after we kind of did dirty by the league. And so a lot of people want to stay away from the NFL. So it'd be interesting. I think the NFL definitely is taking note of what's going on, and maybe some owners that are looking at different relocation options would look to see, that maybe St. Louis is a viable option, like someplace like Jacksonville or somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out the next few years.
Yeah, I just think it's really funny sort of how the Rams go to LA, Chargers go to LA, and then all of a sudden the St. Louis Battlehawks have more hype around them than the Chargers or the Rams.
Yeah.
And I think this is almost like a jab, like obviously not a collective, like everyone, they actually are for the Battlehawks, but It's honestly a really bad look for the NFL and for the LA fan base, how poorly they've been representing their teams and how much the Battlehawks have been supported by their fans. And if I was a Chargers or Rams fan right now, or not fan, excuse me, player right now, and I'm seeing these guys who didn't make the NFL getting more crowds watching them and more people hype about them than me on an NFL team, I'm going to want to leave the Chargers and the Rams.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think legitimately after 4 years, the NFL might consider putting a team back there if this projection continues. Obviously, if it sputters out, well, that's a question to ask you, Sir Battlehawks Day One fan. Do you think the hype will sputter out with the St. Louis Battlehawks?
I don't think the hype will sputter out as long as there's still hype around the XFL. As long as the XFL is still going, the Battlehawks fandom will be alive. I can see other teams kind of dying out before the XFL dies out, but I think as long as the XFL is going, the Battlehawks fans are going to be there way longer than, something like the Wildcats or the New York Guardians. I could see those fan bases kind of dropping out before the XFL peters out. But if the XFL peters out, then obviously there'll be no more Battlehawks fans. But no, I think Battlehawks fans are going to really stick with it. And I think St. Louis is a really strong, underrated sports city. And I think they're going to support the Battlehawks.
Yeah, and one of my biggest takeaways is maybe this should be a blueprint for the XFL to add teams. Maybe they should add teams in cities that don't have NFL franchises. Put one in
Oklahoma
San Antonio,
City.
Oklahoma City. That would be a great one. Oklahoma City's been really, getting huge lately.
Yeah.
People are moving there. Their infrastructure's coming up. They would definitely be able to support an XFL team.
Definitely.
So yeah, and I feel like those would have a ton more hype than the
I
teams
agree.
like as we're seeing. So maybe that's a blueprint, for the XFL to move forward. Just put them in teams where there aren't NFL teams, and steal those fans that are rooting for the team 3 states over from them.
Yeah, stick a team in Salt Lake.
Ah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that'll end this segment. Thank you so much, Reese, for being on to talk
Thanks for
about.
having me on.
Oh yeah, of course. Thanks for being on to talk about some St. Louis Battlehawks. It was a lot of fun. We'll try to have you more on as long as the hype continues, as you predict it will. But make sure to stay with us because we'll be moving to the MLB and the injury to the Yankees Luis Severino, and what kind of implications that will have on their season. Welcome back to the show, everyone, and we are joined by surprise guest Shane Palma. And it was so much of a surprise guest that he didn't even know he was going to be on the show till about 2 minutes ago. But he knows everything Yankees. You see he has the Yankees hat on, and he is always prepared. So Shane, obviously Luis Severino injury hurts a lot.
Yes.
What implications do you think it'll have on the team next season?
Well, I mean, we went through this last year, the Yankees, my Yankees. It's next man up. I mean, we didn't have Severino for most of the season last year, still ended up winning the division, making it pretty far in the playoffs. It's tough in general, especially with pitching. Just signed Garrett Cole, obviously a very large deal. Helps a lot. Not having Paxton, I know we're going to get into that too, but James Paxton being out definitely hurts. But Severino, I mean, he was going into a contract year in the next season, out until 2021 with the Tommy John surgery. It hurts. I wanted him actually a long time ago to be used as a relief pitcher because I thought stretching him too long would have had an effect on his arm, and obviously the effect on his arm is shown through now.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I could talk bad about the Yankees. I really do. But they had the most players on the DL and spent the most time on the DL last year. They still managed to win 103 games in the division. They have Garrett Cole. Severino was almost their ace last year for the most part. Now they have a certified ace in Garrett Cole. It will hurt them with the lack of depth with the pitching staff with him out and Paxton out, but I think they will be fine, sadly enough.
Well, depth can always be an issue, but they have J.A. Happ, they thankfully retained. Tanaka, who can turn it on, he could be on or off, and consistency's always been a problem, but as long as he's his playoff self during the regular season, that could be beneficial. Jordan Montgomery is back this year, finally. He's been out for quite some time. And then they got guys like Devi Garcia, top prospect, coming up through the ranks, who is a flamethrower of a pitcher. He can throw 100 miles an hour as a starter. And then Clark Schmidt, who throws a nasty curveball, who right now had a fantastic debut in spring training today. So I'm not too worried about their pitching depth.
Yeah, don't throw the depth question at Shane. He'll name every player in their farm system. But like you said, they still have J.A. Happ and Tanaka. Even if Tanaka is his regular season self, he still has shown that he just turns it on in the playoffs, and they're not going to miss the playoffs. There's no way.
No.
So with Garrett Cole, Tanaka, J.A. Happ had a down year, but he has proven that he's a veteran. He's made some All-Star games, I'm pretty sure.
And he's an innings eater, and if worse comes to worse, the Yankees suffer another injury. They have Clint Frazier they still haven't traded yet. They have Thairo Estrada, who they still have because they have great infield depth too. And there's guys out there on the Giants like Jeff Samardzija, Johnny Cueto, who could be shipped off. I know there's a few other names. If the Phillies want to unload Jake Arrieta and eat some of his salary, the Yankees could take him. But there's plenty of pitchers out there for them to go get.
Yeah, and I'll see what you think about this. The Yankees have been known forever to make the big moves, and especially in midseason. So with the scandal that has happened in Houston, do you think it would be possible for the Yankees to pull a deal to get Justin Verlander? Because he might want to get out of there. He hasn't said anything, but as a pitcher on that team, you're put in kind of a weird spot. And I think the Yankees, based on their track record, might try to get something done to get Verlander and then reunite him with Garrett Cole.
A few years ago before Verlander went to Houston, the Yankees were never in on him. Everyone says that Cashman should have went out and got him. He never wanted to make a move. He saw the contract. He saw he was aging, but obviously that wasn't the right call because he went on to have 2 dominant seasons and lead the Astros to the World Series multiple times. But at this point in his career, he still has maybe 1 or 2 years left on that contract. He is older
2021
now.
When it's coming
2021. They would have to eat some of his salary, and I doubt they want to make a deal with the Yankees in the near future.
Yeah, Justin Verlander, from what all I've seen, has been very content with the Astros. Obviously, the scandal makes it weird for all the Astros players, but he was a pitcher. He knew he should have stopped it, but he didn't. But I think he's very happy being in Houston. He's been in Houston for a while now. I don't see any reason why he'd want out.
There you go. You got anything else to add, Shane?
Well, everyone always talks about the injuries to the outfield, and obviously we've seen Aaron Judge with the sore shoulder now, and Stanton's out with a grade 1 oblique injury, which could cost him up to a month, maybe more. But they just started using Miguel Andujar, who's finally back again this year, and he's playing left field. They still have Clint Frazier. They're getting Mike Tauchman back. Aaron Hicks had Tommy John surgery, so he's out for a good majority of the season. But as long as they keep the next man up mentality, they should be good to go this year.
Next man up, and that's what we did with Shane, the Yankees mentality.
Next man up.
All right, well, if you don't have anything else, that'll wrap up this show. Thanks for joining us for the 6th episode of Tailgaters. Make sure to follow us on our website at MUTV and on our Twitter at 23 Sports MUTV. Thanks. Have a good night.